నా వెనకాల ఉన్నది ఓపెన్ కాస్ట్ ఏరియా అనుకుంటున్నారా? కాదు, ఇర్వింగ్ లో ఉన్న ల్యాండ్స్కేప్ వేస్ట్ మేనేజ్మెంట్ గురించి తెలుసుకుందాం. లెట్స్ గో. మనం ఇప్పుడు ఇర్వింగ్ లో ఉన్న డంప్ యార్డ్ దగ్గరికి వచ్చాము. దీనికి సంబంధించిన ఆపరేషన్ మేనేజర్స్ బ్రిండా హెనీతో ఇక్కడ ఉన్నాము.
So my name is Brenda Haney. I'm the Solid Waste Services Director for the City of Irving. We are currently at the Hunter Farrell landfill. This is a city-owned and operated facility, and we handle all of the municipal solid waste that is collected from our single-family homes here in the city of Irving. We also have a private waste hauler that brings us waste, and we process anywhere from 750 to 1,500 tons per day of waste. Everything that comes in the gates here is put on a working face. We have a spotter, who is the gentleman in the bright yellow shirt, who is responsible for kind of traffic control of this. He spots everybody, they unload, and then we spread and pack the waste. We also have private citizens that will haul waste out here themselves, and so they will unload. What happens is we'll use a couple of different pieces of equipment to either spread the waste, and then these guys are focused on packing it. There is this piece of equipment over here is called a compactor. This is a similar unit. It's just a smaller version of the same piece of equipment. And their whole job is to run over the waste all day long and pack it up. So they are trying to rip any bags apart. The wheels the teeth on the wheels are set up so that they will rip those bags open, so that we can break that open and get it to a point where it'll degrade better. And so then we pack that waste down. The piece of equipment on the far side is called a dozer. And that piece of equipment's responsibility is to push and spread the waste that comes in all day long. So those guys work kind of in concert. It's kind of the dozer spreads, and then the compactor packs all day long. We're at a point now at the end of our daily operation where we are starting to prepare for cover. So we're hauling dirt that we have stockpiled on site. We haul it up here. The dozer will, when these articulated trucks will unload it, then the dozer will spread that material, and at the end of each day we put 6 inches of compacted soil on top of the waste. The purpose of that is to keep our site from being a nuisance. So you'll have no windblown litter, no odor, and we don't allow animals into the waste that way with the daily cover.
How many people, what is the manpower you have, and how many trucks daily you're gonna come, you're gonna get here, and the dump all the wastage you're getting here, it's like a recycled one, already recycled one, or else it's going to recycled, okay. Or how exactly?
Let's do one at a time. Okay, so in our department we have about 100 employees. Approximately 80% of our employees are on the waste collection side. The waste collection includes recyclables, trash, and then what we consider brush and bulky waste items. All of those materials go separately. So anything that is trash that is picked up in the garbage truck comes to this side. The recyclables that we collect curbside are then hauled to a material recovery facility where they are processed, and then they are repacked. They are shipped to another part of the world where they are then turned back into raw material, and then new products are made out of them. So a plastic bottle may turn into a piece of carpet at some point. So that's what happens with the recyclables. The brush and bulky waste items, if it's bulky waste, it's just large oversized items that the men cannot physically pick up and put in the trash truck themselves. So large pieces of furniture, appliances, and if it's furniture or large oversized items like that, it'll come here to the landfill. If there are appliances that have any kind of a refrigerant in it, then we pull those aside separately up at the front, and then we extract the refrigerant from those, and then we recycle the metals. We also take the refrigerant to another company that recycles the refrigerant. Anything that is metal that we can see, like if this guy were unloading metal post with part of his fencing, we would ask him to pull that metal post out and set it up at the recycling bins at the front of this. So we've got 2 different recycling operations that are done here for material that is hauled to us. So paint, motor oil, lead acid batteries, which are car batteries, tires and metals or appliances are all separated at the front of our facility.
Okay.
And those are all recycled. We pay to recycle tires, we pay to recycle the refrigerant, but we pay to recycle the tires. We get a little bit of money for the metals. And that all is kind of depends on what the market is for the metals. So that's all based on the commodity prices that they can sell that material for. We have a separate little drop-off station for all of our residents that want to haul recyclables to us that may not necessarily get serviced by our trucks curbside. So if you live in an apartment complex or you run a small business, then those folks will haul their recyclables down here. In most of the United States, curbside recycling is done in what we call a single stream system, which means everything goes into one container. And all of that material then goes to a material recovery facility and then it is optically or mechanically sorted by different machines.
When it is windy, like all the trash, it gonna fly up in the air, right? So how do you manage the things? Like how exactly you manage these things to stay there in a place?
Okay, so part of what we do on a day when it's very windy like this is we try to keep our working face as small as possible. So we keep it as narrow as we can, and we also try to tuck below a hill. So that's part of what we do with that operation, and we keep it pushed and packed and keep the equipment on, and that'll keep a lot of that windblown material. You can't really get a good visual of it, but you can see some fencing back here, and so we have litter fences like that on both sides of the facility. So when the wind is blowing out of the south, they aren't going to catch the windblown litter, but we have a series of those up on the north side of the facility to catch that, and then we also catch anything on our perimeter fence. We are responsible for not only picking that, we'll go and pick all that windblown litter up, and then we'll bring it back up here in bags. And cover it at the end of the day. We are also responsible, part of what we do to be good neighbors is that we will go out and pick up any windblown litter that's along the roads, and we're responsible for about 2 miles of the roadways from this facility. So we'll pick up that windblown litter. We have community service workers that do that, and then they will bring that material, they'll drop it in bags, and we'll go pick the bags up and bring it here.
So do you make use of this sand and all as well?
So this is daily cover. There's trash underneath us.
Oh, underneath?
Okay, yeah. So this is soil that we are stockpiling to use for cover. So part of what we do, we operate what we call sanitary landfills.
Okay.
And part of what our goal is that we are currently operating in the United States under what we call a kind of a dry tomb methodology. So most landfills have a liner system on the bottom of some type. Most of them have a plastic liner system on the bottom. Then when they are finished, they will have a plastic cover on the top of them. So we're basically creating a large garbage bag to preserve the waste in. But what we do on a regular basis is we cover every day. So we've got berms. You can see a little bit of a berm over there because we were working over there. It's a little high piece of dirt. So the idea is that we don't want water to run onto the site, and we don't want water to run off because those create nuisances. So we want water that lands on the actual working face, will drain down through all of the waste, and eventually will be pumped up in our leachate collection system, and it goes over to the wastewater treatment plant for treatment. Okay. So this material is just part of our daily cover operation. So each and every day at the end of the day, we cover all of the trash that came in, and then the next day, normally what we try to do is we're building a lift of waste that we're moving across, right? So we're at this height, and you can see it slopes down on the back side of this. Tomorrow we'll go right against that sloped portion and extend the elevation out to this height going that direction. So we keep kind of building this. So all of this that you see, all of this topography that you see is waste.
Okay.
And so what we're trying to do is create, positive drainage so that we are not we'll put a berm up on the upstream side so we don't let water run onto it, and then we put one on the downstream side so that water doesn't run off. Water that gets caught on that working face then goes down into the leachate collection system like I mentioned, and then everything else sheds off into stormwater that we manage on our perimeter. Okay? So we're trying to do this very systematically to build this height up, and so we always preserve an area too because we've got rain expected later this week. So another thing that we want to do is when it's rainy, as you can see, there's a lot of dirt, and so it can be difficult to sometimes maneuver the traffic. So we try to keep a smaller area that's a little higher and a little closer for all the trucks to come to, so that they aren't trying to get into a smaller area. We'll put them up a little further up. So you asked about how much waste we do. So we have been on this site since 1981. And we have another 60 or so years of remaining capacity.
Okay.
We work really diligently at trying to maximize the airspace. So for us, the smaller the area we can get it in, the thicker we can put the waste, the better compactive effort we can get out of that, so we can help try to accelerate the settlement of this waste. Waste, quite frankly, is not going to degrade real well in this environment. But we preserve it and keep it here, and then we monitor it. So there's a number of environmental things that we monitor that we do during the operation, and then when we ultimately close this site, we're still responsible for doing that same monitoring.
Is this whole area, and what is your opinion and what are your roles and responsibilities over here?
Okay, so as part of our permit, we have about 350 acres, but only about 100 of that, 150 or so of that is permitted for waste disposal. So a lot of the rest of that is what we call a buffer zone, so that we have a little distance between us and our neighbors so that we aren't a nuisance to them. So that we don't have development encroaching on the footprint of the waste. I love what I do. I'm a civil engineer by education, the great thing about a landfill is that it really encompasses all the disciplines of civil engineering. We've got materials, we've got geotechnical, we've got transportation, we've got water, because we've got to control the water coming in and out of this and making sure that we're treating the water appropriately. So it's every discipline and it's got, obviously has the environmental science side of it. So it's got every discipline that I was ever educated on in civil engineering. I absolutely love it. What I know about what we do for this community is we're unsung heroes. Most folks don't even notice what it is that we do, and that's not just solid waste. That's kind of typical of civil engineering work in the first place. You know, your roads are well engineered and safe to travel on. That's a civil engineer. When you turn on your faucet and you get clean water, that's civil engineering. When you flush the toilet and it goes away and you never have to think about it again, that's civil engineering. And solid waste management is civil engineering. So all the things that we do are the things that most folks take for granted in their daily life, and what gives them those, a large part of what we do is really controlling the health and safety of the community. It was all put into place as a public health issue because we wanted to keep people from getting disease and being sick, and that's why we have these facilities. We've spent millions of dollars on this site. We've got a large engineering project that's going to start for the next phase of our development. That's going to be nearly $7 million worth of engineering and construction. So, there's a whole lot of money that goes into this, and it's about making sure we have a good environment for our community. Area we take materials that we want to make sure they get properly disposed of, but we don't want to handle in the actual working phase. So these are items like tires. You can't bury a whole tire. They will walk right up through the waste, and they'll punch right out through the side liner. So that's one of those things we've learned over the years. So we take tires and we put them in this trailer, and then somebody comes and hauls them off and recycles them. In these bins behind you, we put metals in there. So anybody that brings those metal items will load into that, and then these will be hauled off and recycled by somebody else. We also accept paint. and used motor oil and car batteries, and we'll separate those and we'll get those hauled off. We have a separate guy that'll come in and get the batteries, and the paint and used motor oil we handle a little differently. If the motor oil is clean, we have a maintenance facility on site that has a waste oil heater, and we'll use that motor oil in that heater for power source. So these are our appliances, and many of them can be loaded, and we'll come over later and we'll grab items like the water heater, the cabinet, the dishwasher, washing machines, dryers, and those can all be loaded straight into the metal bin. Items like the refrigerators, or if we have air conditioners, they have a refrigerant in them, and we have to extract that refrigerant before we can be rid of them. So we have a guy that is certified to remove that Freon. He'll come over, remove the Freon, and then he marks all of those, and when they are marked, then we know they're safe to put in the metal bin. There used to be a lot more metal to those materials than there is now, but there's still a little bit on there, and we get the metals back from that. Any materials that come through here, if they aren't source separated right here, then they ultimately end up being buried. So we are allowed by rule to put electronics in our landfill. Now, we also host 7 events throughout the course of the year that are free to our residents, where they can bring electronics or computer items to those events. And all they do is bring them to us, and we accept them at no charge, and then we have a recycler that takes those items. So they're partnered with either our paper shredding event, so people that have sensitive documents that want them destroyed, then we have a commercial shredder that comes out and they will shred those on site, and then we'll have our electronics recycler will come and set a bin, and he'll take the electronics there. We also host 3 household hazardous waste events, so if folks have items at their home, we tend to pack rat stuff in our garages in the United States, so folks will find things when they go to clean out their garage, and they'll end up with some chemicals that are unusable at this point in time. And those items end up going through our home chemical collection facility. So they host events for our residents only, and they come on site, and then our electronics guy also comes to those events. Okay, so this area is a recycling drop-off center that we offer to any of our residents that don't have curbside collection of their recyclables. So folks that live in an apartment complex that we don't necessarily service with our trucks can bring recyclables down here. There are some of our residents that we service that still bring us recyclables, and we allow small businesses in. But these dumpsters will go to the same place that all of our curbside recyclables go. So this is, again, what we call single stream. So everything that we can process through our recycling contract goes into these containers, and then they haul it over to the material recovering facility, and then they sort those items. And then they market each of those individual commodities separately.
How far this landfill is far away from city?
Well, we're in the city limits of Irving. So we're on the far southern end of the city. So we've got neighbors that are within a few hundred feet of us. Immediately to our north. On the south side is another city. We still have a little bit of space to us on the eastern side that's in the city Irving, and then there's plenty of land that's inside the city limits to our west.
Okay, so in India we are having a program called Swachh Bharat. So any suggestions or anything for?
Well, I wish India the very best with that. That'll be a great initiative. You've got to educate your residents. They've got to understand the value of making sure that the waste that they're generating is being properly disposed of. And the simplest explanation for most folks and how we kind of got started with organized collection and disposal in the United States was from a public health standpoint. It was very common in the 60s and 70s in the United States that communities would take waste to the limits of their city or to the very edge of their city, and it would be buried in what we called dumps back then. We're right in the middle of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex at this facility, and most folks would have no idea that this is a community of 7 million people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. There's another landfill across the river of ours that belongs to another city. We're no longer at the far limits of it, but which makes it even more important for us to properly manage what we do, because we're right in the community. thank you V6 News for the opportunity to tell you a little bit about our operation. We're real proud of what we do. I'm the engineer that gets all the praise out in the public, but I really want to thank all the men that work for me, because they're the ones that do all the heavy lifting and make this such a fabulous operation for me to get to be a part of.